Welcome to the first training video for Matrix Games World in Flames. My name is Stephen Hokinson. This chapter covers the opening screen, the layout of the opening screen, how to restore a saved game, and then I'll also cover one page of the first picture and text tutorial. The opening screen has 10 picture and text tutorials in the upper left and 10 interactive tutorials in the upper right. Clicking on any of these 20 labels brings up the corresponding tutorial. The picture and text tutorials are, as their name implies, a picture with accompanying text. There are 125 pages for these tutorials. Each of them shows at least one screenshot. The interactive tutorials operate in a different manner. They start by loading a saved game, and then you are shown a set of instructions which, as you follow them, go through the various aspects of the game. In addition to the instructions, there is also a commentary which explains why the instruction is there, what it does, and what the results will be when you follow them. As you can see by the picture and text tutorial labels, these are the basics. The countries, the map, the various unit types, what the turns, hex control, supply, and the sequence of play. The interactive tutorials get into more of actually playing the game. They'll show you the screen layouts and map views, how you can jump around the world and see what's happening in China, then back in Europe, and then down into the Pacific. How to set up your units, air movement and combat, land movement, combat, naval movement and combat, production, and some of the politics. For now, let's look at the 5 buttons. Restoring a saved game, starting a new game, the obvious help and exit program buttons, and the 5th button, private World in Flames NetPlay forum. This is unusual. What it does when you click on this is it takes you out to the Matrix Games dedicated server for World in Flames. You can use that to find an opponent to play World in Flames over the internet, and also it's used when you start an internet game. For now, let's look at restoring a saved game. When you click on this button, this panel on the left comes up, which lists the 11 scenarios, and then there are 5 directory choices underneath that. The 11 scenarios for World in Flames are 2 short, Barbarossa, Guadalcanal, 2 half-map scenarios, Fascist Tide, Day of Infamy, and the 7 full-map scenarios. The full-map scenarios start from different places during the war. So Global War is the invasion of Poland by Germany. Miss the Bus starts after France has fallen and Vichy France has been declared. Lebenstraum starts with the German invasion of the USSR. Waking Giant is the Japanese invasion of Pearl Harbor, December 1941. Brute Force, Darkness Before the Dawn, and Decline and Fall come later in the war. Barbarossa is the scenario you should start with. It's 5 turns, and it focuses on land movement and land combat. Once you've played through Barbarossa once or twice, you'll have a pretty good understanding of how the land operations work. Guadalcanal focuses on the Navy, naval movement, and naval combat. It starts in 1942, and it's Japan versus the United States and the Commonwealth in the Pacific. As the name implies, Guadalcanal is one of the focuses of the conflict. Fascist Tide is the Atlantic and European half of the world. Day of Infamy is the Pacific and China half of the world. When you click on one of these scenarios, say Guadalcanal, then your scenario choice is combined with your directory choice. In this case, the directory was saved games. What the program does is bring up the Guadalcanal saved games. These were all saved individually by the player. If you click on one of these, say multiple naval combats, another panel is brought up which describes what that saved game is all about. The version, when it was saved, that it's Guadalcanal, Solitaire, players was Grotius, and the turn was May, June 1942, Impulse 1, Naval Movement. There are no subphases to naval movement, and Japan is the deciding major power. If you go back to, say, MTL 2072, Naval Repair, then that game was saved in 2013. The program's version number was 1054, and it was, again, Guadalcanal Solitaire. The player's name is Player. Again, it's May, June 1942. The impulse is up to 11, and it's the return to base phase. The Allied player, in particular the Commonwealth, is deciding how to return his units that are out at sea to base. So let's go back to the directory choice. If instead of saved games by the player, we go to AutoSave General, these are again Guadalcanal games. These were saved automatically by the program during the phases where both sides are making decisions. liberation, naval repair, partisan. These are all phases where both sides are decision makers. And in particular, if you look at the use oil, you will see that the saved games are made for when the Commonwealth was about to use oil, then a second saved game when Japan was about to do it, and a third one when the United States was about to use oil. So for the use oil phase, there are actually 3 separate saved games at different points in time. The AutoSave Axis are saved games that were made during phases where the axis was the phasing side. For instance, when the Axis was doing air rebase or air reorganization and air transport, a saved game was made at the beginning of each of those phases. If we go to the AutoSave Allied, we'll see the same names: air rebase, air reorganization, and air transport. But this time it's for saved games AutoSaved Allied. When the Allied player comes around to the air rebase phase again, this saved game will be overwritten by a new one. However, it will not interfere with the air rebase save game that was made by the Axis player. All of the auto-saved games are overwritten as the sequence of play comes upon the same place as when the save was made previously. The saved games personal never get overwritten unless you choose to do so. Now I want to show you one page of the picture and text tutorials. Starting a new game, first page. There are 7 pages in this tutorial, and the first page shows you a screenshot of the global map with the terrain legend underneath explaining what all the different colors mean, and on the right a text description that goes with this screenshot. If you're not already familiar with World in Flames, it was a board game published by the Australian Design Group in 1985. It was very successful, and over the years they've developed many expansion modules. The basic game itself went through numerous editions and receiving a lot of enhancements to the map, the counters, the rules, and now 25 plus years later it's still selling well. Transferring this game to the computer required an enormous amount of work. There are several acronyms which you will see a lot in both the tutorials and also in the player's manual. MWIF for Matrix Games World in Flames. This is the computer version. And also RAW for Rules as Written, which are the rules for the World in Games Final Edition, or WIF-FE. So these acronyms are MWIF for the computer game, RAW for the rules for the board game, and WIF-FE, which is the board game itself. The biggest change from the board game to the computer game was the world map. The board game had 5 maps. One was of Europe, which extended out to the Urals and Russia and went down as far south as the northern portion of Africa. This was the finest grain scale. The second major map involved Asia, and it included the Indian Ocean, India, Australia, and the Pacific as far out as Hawaii. The scale for this map was much different than it was from the European map. The third map was supplemental and added Africa from more or less where it was terminated by the European map, and it runs all the way down to South Africa. The fourth map is a mini-map that just covered the missing piece of Scandinavia, and the last map was a mini-map of the Americas. It covered all of the Americas. As I said, the scales were all different, so when we went to the computer game, the decision was made to take the European scale and apply it worldwide. And that is what this map that you're looking at reflects. From the north to the south, there are 195 hexes. From east to west, there are 360 hexes. The poles, North Pole and South Pole, have been cut off, but the east-west is a wraparound. So as you go off heading east, you come back in from the western edge of the map. Essentially, the world map is a cylinder. This concludes the first chapter of the training videos. The next chapter in the series of training videos covers the map, the terrain, and the countries.